Rocket is the key fintech hub in Lithuania, where top creators and founders build the future of financial technologies and the next generation of sustainable innovations. Acting as a dynamic ecosystem, we provide space for networking, expertise sharing, and cooperation, enabling and contributing to the success stories of the finance, technology, and innovation sectors. During the past years, our hub has established a leading position as the home of fintech and core place for fintech community.
Hello, and welcome to the conference about open data. Data is estimated to have the same impact on modern economy as fossil fuels had in 20th century. Public bodies produce, collect, and pay for vast amounts of data. Examples includes geographical location, statistics, weather, data from business sources. With the help of Open Data Directive in European Union, countless of successful companies already created a base for open data. Businesses urging for more data to accelerate the development. But are current steps enough to accelerate startups in this area? And do we correctly understand the impact of opening this data for business and startup community? That's what we're going to talk about in this conversation. My name is Darius Versackas. I'm a co-founder and chief marketing officer of Heavy Finance, and I will assist you through this discussion. And first of all, I would like to invite you to hear the presentation of Mindaugas Ubartas, CEO of ICT Sector Association Infobalt. So Mindaugas, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be invited in such a discussion, and usually, I'm very excited about the future, but in this time, I will say that we need to be faster. When we are talking about open data, we need to, first of all, have a clear definition what it is, because there is a misunderstanding, in my opinion, from regulatory body and from the business community, what in Lithuania, at least, what we call open data. In our world, or in business community world, open data is the real-time. It has to be real-time data. It has to be digital, that's for sure, because it's no fun to go to church and read metrical books, which are open data, but you cannot do it digitally and you cannot get it real time. And it has to be actual. It cannot be aggregated for the business purposes, because everything what is aggregated, that's already a statistics. And here we have this definition misalignment between the public sector and the business sector in Lithuania. And I hope that such discussions and conferences will allow us to get more closer to each other. When we're talking about open data, we should also, in my opinion, start talking about and showing the examples, what it did in the past and what it can do in the future. We don't think about, as an example, Bolt or Uber as an open data company, but in reality, the concept of open data enabled this gig economy to appear, like shared economy, like Airbnb, Uber, and Bolt. Why I'm saying so? Because the business model is that me as a customer, I show openly the data, my open data, my location, my willingness to purchase some goods or food or ride, and the supplier from another end shows his location and his willingness to supply me with the services. So basically, it's a real-time open data exchange which enables these platforms to live. The same, let's remember some years ago, pre-digital years, how we were booking the hotels. We were calling some travel agency. We were asking for them to find the best deal for us. And now we are just logging into the web and getting all the world's hotels at our fingertips. So that's what was enabled by open data. And because we need real-time data about occupancy, we need the real-time data about availability, pricing, and we want the deal to be made real-time here. So that's what open data enables. It transformed also the financial sector, and let's say this digital and real-time data transformed banking sector at the beginning. It was not yet open at this extent as we have now with PSD2, when I can allow as a customer many financial institutions to access my banking account and do the transactions on my behalf. So we have a huge economical growth and impact and efficiency due to that we enabled open data in the business environment. When we are talking about public sector, here we are, in my opinion, we are struggling in Lithuania and in all other countries because the benefits of open data, which are marketed, we are saying that if we use open data even more, we can grow 2% of GDP. We are showing billions of potential economic value which can be created by open data. But there are three pillars of benefits the open data can give. One pillar is more efficient public governance. So for this, that all the decisions in the government and in the public field would be made data-based and proof-based decisions, which we could exploit. Yes, that will help somehow increase economy and our living, but we are not talking about the real open data for such. What is enough for the public governance is a statistical data. It means aggregated data and which is modeling and showing which decision will lead where. So it's not needed actual individualized data. When we are talking, another pillar is citizens inclusion or inhabitants inclusion, not only citizens, when we are talking about single market in Europe. So that's again, you can show this data and include, and every human being or machine can read the statistical data and analyze the decisions and how to say, be inclusive in the government and governance of the public and field. But that's again not economical value. When we are talking about economical value, I would say we still have a way to go. Yesterday, I wanted to get the articles of incorporation of my own company where I am a sole shareholder and sole and CEO. And I was not able to get this data. That was not open. It was a paid data from our register centers. And that's a problem, in my opinion. We should say that the government is run by data. If we are saying that previously it was fossil fuels which enabled our economies to grow, and now we are saying that it's a data which will enable our economies to grow. So this data has to be free of charge, widely available. So then all the ecosystem and all the management of government and public sector has to change and shift the paradigm from document management and document management systems to data management and data management systems. It means we should stop using the documents. We must start using the data, and this data should be widely available. Okay, we need to take into consideration GDPR. Agree with that. But let's talk about business. Let's talk about shareholders register. Let's talk about its creditability of the companies. Let's talk about this data, which is not confidential and which is not protected. It's still under free locks. It's not available for the public, and it's still not available for innovation and startups or established business to use. we still need to go quite a long way to get it, or we are trying to aggregate it, or we are trying to scrap it from the web, or it's not a convenient way. So it's not efficient way. So here we need clearly say that this is the way forward, that the government is opening the data which is not aggregated and which is not anonymous, but the data which is reusable, which is real time, and which is actual, that we could build these new business models and transform and make our businesses even more efficient. That's the way to go, in my opinion.
You raised some very good points on opening the data for the governments and for the business. You mentioned GDPR, PSD2, and other initiatives being run by European Union. But actually, what's your take on whether countries should do it itself, or we should wait for the guidelines coming from European Union in opening more data?
I think that Usain Bolt would not be winning any Olympic medals, not in this Olympiad, but before, if he would be waiting for the guidelines. Yeah, in my opinion, in the Baltics, we are exactly on the right spot to make a digital economy blossom in all the European Union. Why? Because we are in the front end of digital innovations and in digital usability in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and our scale allows us to make even cross-country data exchanges. It's easier to agree in this territory to start making how to say shift. So we should not wait for the guidelines. We should write the guidelines, what needs to be done in order to be prosperous. We have climbed in 30 years. We have made such a how to say development, which other countries in Europe still can envy on the digital domain. So we should not stop here and now waiting till somebody is saying that now you should do that or that. No, we should say that, okay, we are running this country as a real-time economy country. We are running this region as a digital data-driven region, because we are so interconnected and being so tremendously big, our scale allows us to be fast in decision making. So I would say no waiting, just doing. Government as a platform, open data as a as a constitutional right, and changing this opening up it and changing the paradigm in the institutions and in the businesses, that the data which I am holding is not mine. The data belongs to Mindaugas or to Darius or to Infobalt or to Rocket, and they need to decide how to use it, would enable us to get these GDP growth, to see these billions in the accounts of the country.
That's a very beautiful and empowering thought that, well, just like in fintech, Lithuania decided to kind of lead the game. We can do the same in open data and lead the way how we should deal with it. And now I would like to invite to join the conversation one of the top experts in open data field, Szymon Lewandowski, legal and policy officer within the Data Policy and Innovation Unit of the European Commission. And it's very interesting to hear your take on, first of all, European Union initiatives like GDPR, PSD2, Open Data Initiative, and how it has been changing Europe considering opening data. So, Szymon, welcome.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting us to participate in this really interesting event. Well, I would like to thank already for the first introductory remarks. I have to say that we have been preaching open data across Europe for a while, and but what was already said in the beginning is spot on. This is really something that I couldn't phrase it better myself. So thank you already for putting these first very important thoughts, important elements of what open data is, what impact it could have on the important elements of cross-border, cross-country sharing of data, openness, and to which extent it depends both on the public sector and on the private sector. So it's really sort of a culture change that we are still struggling with. And I think there has been enormous progress across Europe in the last 10, 15 years, but there is still a way to go. So I would like to indeed say a couple of words about what we have been doing in order to promote open data and in order to put in place a common European framework in terms of policy, in terms of legislation, and also give a few examples of use cases where we see this approach really works. So I would try to exactly show here on another screen a presentation that I prepared. It may not be the most sort of high-tech solution because we had some problems here trying to stream it properly, but please warn me if something is not working. So are the slides changing actually? If so, I would like to start with a quote from our commissioner, Mr. Thierry Breton, who is the commissioner responsible for the internal market. And I think it's quite an important quote because it shows a certain shift in the thinking on the top political level in Europe about what data is and what it can be. So basically, there is a big push now with this commission to make sure that European companies and the European society at large can really profit, can really benefit from the use of data that is being produced and generated as we speak in Europe. Because we all know that until recently, of course, the data economy has been developing very, very fast, but probably the epicenter of that change was outside of Europe. And I think what our commissioner tries to say is that it's really time that we as Europeans, as European businesses especially, basically reap that opportunity and unleash the power of data that we have in Europe. So there is a sort of high-level political push to do more on data, and that includes open data. So why is open data or government data so important? It was already mentioned that indeed, when we look at the European scale, when we look at the indicators such as GDP or market size, we are already talking about billions or even hundreds of billions, because in fact, studies show that, let's say, the value of the services and products directly or indirectly created through the use of open data, well, creates a lot of value. It also creates employment, and it is spreading across different sectors. So whereas there are already sectors that have benefited from open data for quite a while, it was already mentioned, the public sector itself actually is the main beneficiary of open data, because being able to put in place efficient data management procedures and being able to use the data properly, the data which is already in the public sector, makes it much more efficient and really helps it execute its public sector tasks much better. So the public sector, of course, the research community, scientific community, mobility. In the mobility sector, there has been already a lot of use cases on how to use open public data, actually very much also on a local level. So we should not forget that when we talk about open data, it's not only central government registers, it's also the data which is held by municipalities, for instance. And in the case of traffic, in the case of mobility, this is really the key source of data. And then there are other sectors of high potential where data, let's say, is only now making its impact, and there's a lot of potential in it. So we're talking about finance, we're talking about real estate, we're talking about agriculture and health. There's still a way to go to make sure that the data which is available, in some cases more readily accessible, in some cases less, but there is a lot to be gained and a lot to be produced from the data which is already out there in those new sectors. Now, that's already, again, this has been mentioned, but in fact, open data gives us a number of different types of benefits. So on the one hand, clearly it's a resource. Data is an asset. So thanks to data, we can create business opportunities, and we have plenty of use cases, plenty of examples that show us that you can actually have a business idea and a business case from any kind of public data in any sector. So it can be public environmental data to predict disasters. It can be geospatial data and mapping information. It can be even the use of public water temperatures, for instance, to cool industrial sites, or typical case of company ownership data or beneficial ownership data, which is very useful for investors. But at the same time, apart from those strictly economic benefits, we should not forget about transparency, about government accountability. So the use of data, the fact that we can, as citizens, we have the right, in fact, to access the data and do something with it, that can help us to increase transparency in the business community. And this is what big NGOs like Open Corporates, for instance, or Transparency International are doing. We can also look into the information on public spending and procurement, which is also open data, and to be able to see, for instance, which companies are engaged in business relation with the government and the public sector. So that has a clear sort of transparency element and anti-corruption element in it. There's even a case from Lithuania where there's a very nice website showing statistics from courts. So all these data sets are there. They should indeed be as open as possible. That was already mentioned, and we are basically, this is where our policy is heading to, making sure that all that data is accessible, because the use case really only depends on the innovative spirit of citizens and businesses. So let's make sure that this data can work. There are more specific useful sort of successful use cases that we have actually selected here. I will ask the organizers to send around the slides so you can have a look. You can actually see that there is a trend across Europe, and there are many startups, and especially startups and SMEs are using data in very innovative ways. So for both financial or commercial objectives, in job recruitment as well, analyzing the environment of housing markets. This is also a very interesting new avenue that we've seen, new apps appearing in Spain, in the Netherlands, in France. So we think there is an amazing array of sectors that is being impacted by open data, and it's really just expanding on a daily basis. Now, Europe has been, let's say, promoting open data, in fact, for quite some time. And I could even say that we were probably, on the European level, one of the first ones to notice the potential of open data for the economy, especially, because we insisted on having a set of minimum harmonized rules across Europe already back in the beginning of 2003. So that's where we adopted a directive, which is, I think, quite known now as the PSI directive, so the Public Sector Information Directive. It has, as you can see on the slides, undergone a couple of changes. And the legislation itself, we all know it's obviously necessary, especially in a sort of organism like the European Union, where we have many borders, many traditions on dealing with data, different approaches by the public sector, and different levels of digitization of the member states themselves. So legislation is one thing, but we needed to complement that, of course, with other measures, with guidance, with policies, with funding, and also by setting up some technical enabling structures like the European Data Portal. So you can see it all started more or less in 2003, and now we are at 2021. There is a new directive, which is based very much on the PSI directive, but we call it now, or we refer to it as Open Data Directive. It should have been transposed and fully implemented in all member states by the 17th of July. This is unfortunately not the case, so some member states are doing it faster and better, and some of them are lagging behind. So we will be, with my colleagues, chasing them, and we have some sticks to make sure that they deliver. But this is just to show you that it's an important matter. Open data has been really in the heart of the digital policies of the European Commission, and we are sort of updating our policy and legislation to make sure that it's responds to the current technological trends, and basically the direction is always towards more openness. Now, Lithuania is a country which is doing better and better. So as you can see, we have an open data maturity index. It's a kind of an annual monitoring exercise that we perform, and it's available on the website dataeuropa.eu, where we look at each single country of the European Union, and we try to rank them. We try to score according to certain indicators to see whether there's any progress, what could be done in which area, and how basically all these countries compare to each other, and how the European Union as a whole is progressing on its open data journey. So Lithuania has made progress. It's now joined the fast trackers group. So we've divided the countries into sort of beginners, followers, fast trackers, and the trendsetters. They're doing the best. So among the trendsetters, you will find particularly countries like France, Spain, and Ireland. They're really quite on top. But then there's a second group which includes Lithuania. So I think overall there is progress, and overall we can say we are happy to see this kind of progress. But as we all know, and as the practical examples that were quoted before, we know that still there is some work to be done. Not only in Lithuania, unfortunately, in other countries in Europe as well. Just as the last slide, I would like to draw your attention to a portal, which is much more than a website. In fact, it's it's a portal where you can get access to all governmental data, so all public sector information produced in Europe, because it's aggregated on a European level. But it's also actually a knowledge center and a training center for open data, from which we try to monitor, to study what's going on in Europe, and to promote open data. And also there is a number of resources that you can find there if you are interested in open data, if you want to learn more, if you can see what exactly could be done, what kind of opportunities there are, and who might help you across different countries. So I think it's a very useful tool for anyone who's interested in open data. Voila, this is just for a very short, some introductory remarks on what the European Union is doing on open data, how we try to promote its openness and its use. I will be leaving the event now, but I'm leaving you also in the safe hands of my colleagues from the unit, who are also open data experts, who've been working on it for a while, and who have also been in touch with many representatives of business communities and non-commercial users. So I'm sure they'll be able to address all your questions or your concerns and comments. Thank you once again for inviting me to speak, and I I'm pretty sure this is going to be a pretty exciting event. Thanks.
Shimon, thank you very much for being with us. It's great to hear such a wide view and wide perspective of the European Union and how we're dealing with open data and what's the strategy. So thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts on it. And I would like us to move to the panel discussion with even more interesting and great speakers. So I would like to introduce all of them. First of all, Gerda Jurkonienė, CEO and co-founder of open data platform Ocredo. Welcome, Gerda.
Hello, everyone.
Also, Shimon already mentioned Giri Pilar, Legal and Policy Officer in DG Connect, European Commission. Welcome.
Thank you, and hello, good morning.
Also, Adriana Oliveira Amaral, Open Data Practitioner and Product and Program Manager at DairyLinks. Hi. And Yekaterina Bitas, Head of Startup Partnerships at Swedbank Lithuania. Hello.
Hello, everyone.
So these are the speakers, a lot of smart people who will share their thoughts on open data and how business can use it. I would like to urge all of you to ask as many questions as possible. So if you have some thoughts or questions, please share it and we will try to answer and share our thoughts on it. And I would like to start with Gerda. So first of all, congrats on running such an interesting and fast-growing company, which uses a lot of open data. And I would like to know a little bit what are the drivers and trends in this field of opening the data for businesses?
I will start with pros and cons. There are both ways, and actually we see both sides. On one side, as Shimon said, that we see the progress regarding Lithuania opening data. And more institutions are starting dialogue. And as Mindaugas told at his presentation, that government's mentality is one of the criteria, of course, impacting this area as well. So we see that it is step by step, little by little changing. They are going into dialogue. And that's, I would say that's a big step forward. Nevertheless, actually, we still that the majority of the data is not opened, and the government still feels that it's their ownership, not business ownership. So we are moving forward, but it's not enough. And regarding small and medium companies, they are starting to increase their awareness. Of course, we are working hard on that, and this event is, of course, due to that as well. And we hope that in the near future, we'll see even bigger progress.
Okay, you mentioned small and medium businesses opening up their data. And how did pandemic change this whole market? At least from my own perspective, I see that more and more people started using more digital tools, and maybe it had some influence on the opening data as well.
I would say that the key impact was on starting using more actively data. Because if previously everyone knew everyone, or they thought that they know everyone, during pandemic situation, due to lack of the transparency, lack of the and the bigger uncertainty in all the economic situation, small and medium companies, they started using data for checking their potential clients, for evaluating their risk of current clients. And they understood that the value of data for risk management and sales increase is even more important. But of course, there went such a situation that they are standing and waiting for the data, and they say, okay, we need us, just give us. We actually were the ones who were going, talking with the institution, asking what data they could open, which would be important for that situation. And we were like aggregating, creating value-added products for small, medium companies they could use it. And the feedback was actually positive, and we are happy to make an impact on that, to improve the pandemic situation and to decrease the uncertainty and decrease the uncertainty and increase the transparency.
Mm-hmm. Well, Shimon mentioned like trendsetters, countries that are setting trends for open data. I think we can talk the same about the companies, and you just outlined how you're setting trends in the field. But are actually businesses prepared to open their data or to use the open data? And maybe you have some good examples, best use cases.
One just very, very important for us just got to my mind. Last year during pandemic situation, we, together with the initiative of Central Bank, we led the project and led the functionality in our platform for small and medium companies to exchange data about their debtors. And we actually were positively surprised that the companies are using and started to use it quite actively because they wanted to warn other market players about the bad levers, in the market, or fraudsters. So we see the first signs. Still, of course, it's not enough, and in the near future, we are planning to increase the inclusion of small and medium companies by opening their open banking data. And we see many possibilities to use this data for other value-added products and to increase the infrastructure as well. So we see some progress in this area. We see that the awareness is increasing as well. And we see even more possibilities in the near future to create more data from another sources by open by small and medium companies, to include them into this infrastructure.
I think your thoughts will be very well connected with Adriana and Derelink's experience. And Adriana, could you explain a little bit how companies can actually benefit from sharing their own data?
Yeah, thanks, Darius, for the question. Actually, we don't have a straightforward answer. Basically, we have two sides: the user side always and the offering side. It means the offering could be the government side, could be the partners, could be other companies. And the users have their own needs. Specifically, when you're looking for the government side, we need to know exactly what the user needs and maturely understand the needs and addressing that in the daily basis. In Derilinks, we are really enhancing that with Derilinks Labs and create some kind of collaboration environment to really build it and create this kind of impact in ongoing. It's really important, especially for the stakeholders, see, how can I say, that even the small progress, but continuous progress in order to create engagement. And it's important for the data itself. And we keep telling that data is an important asset, but data is a strange asset. We never saw the data itself, Data is the relationship that we have with the data sometimes is Excel spreadsheet, for example, or a graph. So we don't have this kind of kind relation with the data. And it's important to create this kind of good user experience in the data itself. So that's what we are looking for in Derilinks right now, and expanding that in the perspective of the data sharing in the private sector.
Actually, we do collect a lot of data about basically everything. And for me, it often seems like, we're collecting it, but not using it much, or using it in ways that are quite uncomfortable, that we don't even want to look at it, even though we spend so much time and effort to collect it. And how to make that the best use out of the data we collect, and how to make it actually valuable and interesting?
Yeah, good, interesting question, especially because highlight the challenge itself. Yeah, that is a term that we call it the dark data. It means the data that we always collected, but it's really hard to use. So that's why it's so important, the thing that I mentioned before, the prototyping thing, the creating innovative spaces to try it and use it. For example, If I have one here in Ireland, the Unpost, that is focused on logistics, they have a lot of data of delivery time, lease time, pickup time, and delivery time, and so on. For example, this data could really figure out some kind of traffic jams and something like, especially if I look in time. So, but they, in their business, they are only looking for the logistical side of the data and collect a lot of data, maybe using in some internal or cooperative process or need, but there is a lot of side effects of this data. This is one example. So it's really a growing thing, and you need to do it more. Right now, I felt that we have the technology for that. It means we have cloud. It means computing is infinite if you look on the perspective. And we have the whole big data technology, data lake, that we can really create this kind of environment to keep using this kind of dark data in the way that we call it. It means the data that you collect, but you don't know exactly how you're going to use. It's a really process, and I feel that we are on the road. So, but we have a big challenge to address for sure.
Mm-hmm. I would like to hear Gerda's take on the dark data, and can we actually, you start using more data that we already collect?
Yes, of course. Actually, there are more and more possibilities, more and more ideas. We need more time because, as a startup, there are many ideas coming, and usually we just thinking not what to do, but what not to do in the list. So, of course, we see many possibilities in this area as well. So it's the time. It's the time matter actually.
And the money, the resource.
And the money, yeah, from investors.
Well, since you talked about the money and mentioned it, well, the whole market is increasing a lot, and we're talking about close to 200 billion market in 2030 of opening data. And here I would like to hear the take of Giri. How are we doing in achieving this goal? How is the market growing? And maybe there was a good or bad effect of COVID-19.
I cannot yet speak about the effects of COVID-19. I think the chances are that on the open data economy, the effect was actually positive, because a lot of things, like we moved to Zooms and Skypes, a lot of other things moved to the world of data. So we believe that our predictions that we had, I think the freshest one was from 2019, that they still rest valid, more or less. Of course, we will need to have a look again very soon to see how the market has evolved. But I wouldn't see the pandemic as a bad thing for open data. And what is important here to say that we in the European Commission, we don't create business cases. We don't tell anyone what they should do with the data. We just try to create conditions. Shimon, my colleague, earlier mentioned a lot of those elements. So this is why we come here. We are very happy always to hear and speak with users, because those are the ideas. Those are those who come with the ideas, and those are those who will tell us what are the bottlenecks and where we need to focus our efforts. So we know where the conditions should be improved. It can be the technological conditions, formats, machine readability, or the fact that the data is too old, or it can be charges. We can see that charges are sometimes a barrier, especially for SMEs. And if your pockets are not too deep. But sometimes we hear that charges are not at all such a barrier, because what is more important is to have the quality data and have it quickly. So we try to put in place a mix of conditions. And what is important to say is that our rules, the rules that Europe is putting forward, is the minimum. That's why we have many countries who don't wait for us, like Mindaugas was saying. There's no point in waiting whether the Commission will impose some obligations on opening up. There's no point in waiting. There are countries who didn't wait, and we can now present them as the front runners, and we can see that things work and reuse is booming. So this is another important thing to say. And the reusers they play a key role in this, because when you don't have any reusers in the country, or they are quiet, well, the public sector thinks that they can keep the data closed or on PDFs sitting somewhere in the last office in their building, and they don't need to open them. So I'm happy to see such a vibrant community in Lithuania who will definitely push things forward, both in their business and both with respect to government bodies.
It seems to me that, yes, Gerda, please.
I would say that's the perfect approach the public sector should think like. So we should record and translate it and show it wherever we can. So thank you, Didi.
I really like the approach of European Commission that while all the countries has to move to at least the minimum level, and that really helps to all the businesses who wants to go to international markets or already are operating in different countries. So it makes easier for everybody to access that data, to use it and to present it. And I'm interested, well, what is the next milestone or the barrier you're trying to overcome at European Commission with all the European Union states?
Shimon mentioned that we have the new directive, but like I said, the directive is a minimum, and many countries have already been in line with that. So that I would not call as in itself as a big step forward, but this directive contains one thing, and it's the possibility for the Commission, the right for the Commission to say what are the data sets that are really interesting, that the biggest potential, and that the member states should really try to make open, make open data as we know it and as we like to characterize it. It is because reusers and even some member states were coming to us that there's simply so much data, we wouldn't like to know where to start. And it makes sense to start with something that can bring relatively quick gains and that have the data that has potential, economically speaking, but also for society or protection of environment. So we are currently working on the list of these concrete data sets. We call them high-value data sets. And we are in the middle of working on the list. There are still some procedural steps to be done, but we still like to speak with reusers and member states. The public consultation will be launched, we believe, in autumn to hear again from people what they think about the list that we came up with based on information that we have so far. And once this list will be in place, then the member states will really have to make the data open. What it means, it will have to be for free. It will have to be machine readable, accessible by machines via APIs. And when necessary, it will need to be downloadable in bulk in one package. And about the categories of these data sets that is laid down in the directive itself, you can guess it. It's statistical data, environmental data, data on companies, data on mobility, geospatial data, very important. And maybe I'm forgetting some, but there are 6 categories of these very promising data from which we have to choose.
Adriano, I saw that you wanted to comment on this one.
Let me, Jerry, just remember something that's really interesting. We have 2 dimensions, if you look at on that way on the data side. One is really the open data itself that's related to transparency and so on. And there is another dimension that is really the data sharing, the way that we call it right now. So, for example, when as SME send an invoice to a revenue department, we have both the 2 sides of this data. One is that belongs to the SME somehow. And maybe, for example, one startup could build a system and make some kind of data sharing, data as a service, and then start to sell it with agreement and the whole privacy addressed somehow. On the other hand, we have the data that is held by the revenue department, that you become like open data. So we have this kind of different perspective on the same info or on the same data, that the data is always there. For sure, it's really important to enhance the government data itself, the open government side, but we have the whole data share environment and the data economy that could be mostly organic to generate and share this data between them.
Well, definitely we have a lot of data from the governments that has to be open, and we can use more of it. But also I was thinking, well, who also has a lot of data? And it's definitely banks. They collect so much about us. They know so much about us. And I'm very interested in Ekaterina's take on, well, how the data is collected in banks and how you use it. Can it become an extra revenue source in the future?
That you are touching a commercial secret part. I would like to comment maybe on not how we collect data, or it's a bit different story. It's not open data that we keep about our customers, but we actually use open data, and we use a lot of data about the companies and customers on the market and the partners, and use it for our business processes as all big companies, I suppose, do, and feel a lot of benefits, and especially when some bank like Swedbank or any other fintech or company which is making financing services. So the open data and all open data platforms that are able to aggregate and put the data ready for usage actually extremely benefit while managing risks, while making sustainable deals and partnerships. So we take a lot of benefits, and actually we seek to that our customers as well could use the same benefits. So from that perspective, we're happy that to see Gerda today here in the panel, and actually the accredited open data platform. I need to mention that in our innovation center Rocket, we even tried the solution that Accreda provides, and we see that it really opens the opportunity not only for banks, but especially for the bank's customers to use it in their businesses and in their cooperation with other business companies on the market.
Mm-hmm. Ekaterina, you mentioned already fintech community Rocket and how bank is cooperating with startups. Could you mention some more use cases or interesting initiatives that actually happened between the banks and startups in using open data and generating more value out of it?
I like the examples with a sustainability flavor, and actually one of the latest experiments we have made with the company, with the startup, which is called Dorf Bank. So they have tried to take the open data, which is available via open banking. It's account information data, which contains information about the payments that companies make. And we tried to help those companies to calculate their footprint in order to make some advices as well on their improvements and just to get awareness how much footprint they generate. So I unfortunately I cannot be proud that this experiment went very smoothly and it's successful and in some kind of like panacea, but it uncovered some downsides of let's say open data aggregation, and some maybe points which are I see like significant if we want to promote the open data usage, if we really want for businesses, especially for smaller and medium companies, to use this data in their business daily life. So it's first of all probably the data reliability, so it should be reliable. We unfortunately haven't yet made it to top excellence that we can take the data from the account and calculate the very accurate footprint. So accuracy of data is very important. Otherwise, it's misleading but not useful. And of course, it's important. Our markets, I would say, still are different. Speaking about European Union and even not touching the whole world. So all streamline topics, all standardization topics, they as well are very relevant. I think if we talk about the usage of open data and using it for some business decisions, let's say, because it's when some startup or a company comes to the foreign market and starts aggregating data, it takes a lot of cooperation on the local market in order to understand what is this data about, what exactly is measured, how it's measured, what are correlations between different entities on the market, especially as well institutional ones and governmental ones. It differs from market to market. So in that case, of course, I support colleagues saying that there is no need to wait for some directives, right? But there is no need to wait for obligation to open. But from some extent, we have hopes on regulation as they can help to standardize some data sets or some other aspects of open data, because then it's much easier to use it and to have the accurate picture.
And as Ekaterina touched the sustainability topic, we actually have the newest one, good case as well. Lithuanian vehicle fleet register, they open data about companies' vehicle fleet and about every car's CO2 emission to environment. So we, based on that data, calculate every company's cars and every company's fleet eco score. And now every company, they can just check their eco score of the company, how friendly to how environment friendly they are. So that's another example how data open for another purposes could be used for businesses as well. Just another case and example I remember.
Looking from a, let's say, small and medium business perspective, let's say I have a small company, how can I benefit from the data and what should be the first steps I should make? Gerda, maybe let's start from you. Well, what would you recommend small businesses as some of the first steps to do?
The very first step, and that's why we every year organize such days and events, is to check how you look like in front of creditors such as banks or other suppliers. So every company has the possibility for free to get their data unlimited. And the first step should be to look in the mirror, how you are being seen by others. And from that point of view, you can see what data is available on the market about the companies at all. And then usually the companies starting to realize which processes they can enrich by enabling data, either sales increase, either risk management, either hygienic data into accounting processes or ERP systems, etc. And actually we made a research 2 weeks ago for 200 companies. And we see the problem that the majority of open data users are big companies. So as Dar say, it's the problem that small and medium companies still lack the awareness what data is available, where they can find it, and when they know this first step, they usually think of the ideas which processes they can enrich with data.
Adriana, what's your opinion? What should be those first steps for a small company and using open data?
Yeah, this is a big challenge for SME, especially one of the questions that appears regarding to the data literacy, the way that data is skilled in the way that we use it. There is some concept that is still growing in the industry. We call it citizen data scientist. It means a democratization of the access to tools to play with data and extract information or take decisions like data-driven decisions in the small business. That's one perspective. Another one is really a kind of data brokers that could work like create a data revenue stream for a small company. Like imagine that small company selling their own data in the market in the way that sharing and getting some kind of revenue. For example, if a bakery want to be open a sign of a shoe shop, for example, and want to know exactly the movement that we have in that area in order to build their business plan. There's a way that they can share data each other and having some kind of data revenue. But it's still it's a still ongoing process. I think the data visualization right now, the data portals itself are coming with some kind of visualization tools or sandbox tool. That's something that we are approaching here in their links. So it could help them to play around the data that's available, for example, in the Irish government site or Lithuanian government site, and see how I can use that information in my business area. So everything that we can do it to enhance this kind of experience. And as I said, since the sandbox, visualization sandbox, and moving further to try to create a more robust and literacy around the data, I feel that it's good and important, and it is happening actually, and could help a lot.
Yeah, well, I see you read the question in the comment section, so I'll just read it for everybody. So the question is that, well, the availability of the data and the quality of it is just part of the issue. And majority of small businesses doesn't know what to do with the data. That's Aurelius Sinkevich's take, and he's asking, so what are the steps are you going to make to educate them? And I would like to invite to talk a little bit about it, Jiri and Yekaterina. What are your thoughts?
Ekaterina, please go ahead.
I can only support Aurelius. This is really a challenge, and I think that yes, of course, let's say if we speak about the data which could be used for like improving the financial situation, or even the how Gerda was mentioning, looking how do you look in the mirror in front of your financial liabilities and your creditors. So that could as well be in the finance sector, taking this education. This is something which probably is in our hands. But as well, you know, if we're talking about the other aspects or other areas where data could be used, so it's probably up to the companies that as well will be aggregating data and packing it as a service. Let's say that as Ocredo, as Gerda, as your company, you can show all the brilliance how this could help and could improve. But I totally support that awareness of the companies is as well not only about education. I would say there are some as well traditional stuff. For example, we see when I was talking with the team who's taking care about the small and medium business customers at Swedbank, so they mentioned that there is a tradition that if the company wants to minimize the financial risk in the deal, so they will ask much more. They are willing to ask much more for upfront payment, for the bigger upfront payment, let's say for the service of to cover the contract, than to buy some extra data to make a proper decision and to evaluate the risk. So it's not necessarily so. And another example would be as well when we have the POS terminals, so which acquire cards at customers at merchants' sales places. So the bank is providing free of charge the report about their payments there. So you can use this data. This is your customer. You can know, I don't know, in what hour there is the highest score. We can provide some other data that we can put on to increase sales actually. So it seems that it's really like valuable thing, but it's not something that customers are taking like the hot potato. So still there is a need for some, not just only education, but maybe for an entity or a company who is providing the data or who is selling it, packing it as a product, to lighting up all the benefits that this data brings.
Yeah, I totally agree with Katerina, and actually answering to Aurelia's questions, education and improving, promoting and increasing the financial literacy of small and medium companies, of people in Lithuania, is one of the strategic goals in our company as well. Starting from having lectures in university, me, myself, once per week, we signed the strategic partnership contract with the university, and now students can access real companies' data, financial statements, etc. Then every quarter, we, with different organizations, organize webinars in capital, in different cities. So yes, we take that mission in the market, and we make quite a lot of efforts on that, actually. So it's not the short-term goal; it's long-term goal and way, but we make efforts and spend time on this.
Jiri, what about the European Commission? Do you perceive it as a task for actually those businesses and other organizations that are in the field to educate the market, or European Commission has some initiatives on education in open data?
Well, since you're asking, the European Commission indeed does have a special line of activity that is looking at promoting or ensuring digital literacy. I know there's been a project running since a long time that is working with universities mainly, and preparing curricula to make sure that there are actually things taught that are corresponding to what the market players need or what they are expecting. But of course, this will not make such a huge impact compared to the impact that member states themselves can make, and try to look at the priorities from the kindergarten or from elementary schools, where it's quite widely acknowledged now that citizens should be more financially literate than our parents used to be, that they should be more data and digitally literate than we used to be when we went to the elementary schools. So all this is very important and should really start from the younger age. And then, of course, there are some very specific profiles that we can teach at universities, but I think it should start from the ground. So that would be one way to go about it from the education perspective. But we can also make things simpler for SMEs. We like to see countries put together data portals to make sure the data is all at one place, or at least accessible from that one place, or that the data has some uniform format, not only inside one country, but across the borders. There are also tons of initiatives in different sectors on standardization of data. On the data.europa.eu, the European data portal that Simon was mentioning earlier, very important part of the work is education, putting together e-learning courses, going around Europe and speaking with users, actual ones, but also potential ones. There we would not only educate companies, SMEs, but also the public sector, actually the data holders, because very often, very big barrier for opening data is the fact that public sector does not know how to do it. So this is also something that we are doing. For the private sector, we do it with another project, which is called Support Center for Data Sharing. And this support center, again, a big part of what they do is they create learning materials, including videos on how to set up an API, what should a good API look like, how do you write a license, and this kind of things that sometimes look very daunting. And last but not least, the SMEs need to learn themselves. This is how you succeed in the market, that you recreate yourself and learn new things. Also, things are probably easier than they used to be, and they will even get simpler, hopefully, with the availability of new tools. It was very difficult to code a web page some 20 years ago. You need to be a programmer. Today you have tools on the internet that do it for you. You just move your mouse across the screen and you have a web page. Well, and if nothing works, then you can always outsource. You can find a company that knows how to do these things. And if it's not your main business, it's probably better to outsource this kind of very special knowledge, like in many other fields you do. So I think there are ways to overcome these knowledge gaps.
Yeah,
Yes.
sorry, come across,
Yes,
Dario.
please.
Just get the hook from GD. It's really important, especially when looking for the portal itself. And as I told, for sure, the training and learning, it is really important. But create like an intuitive experience, and that's something that we aim here in DevLinks, really create an intuitive experience over the data portal. And in others, that experience, even we don't have the data skills or data savvy thing, you can just go to the portal and find yourself good information, good data that could be used right away, right straight away.
Okay, and just a quick one. Please ask questions. I'm happy that we already have some, but we're always happy to answer to all the questions that matters to you. And I see that we have one directly to Swedbank and to Ekaterina. So the question is when Swedbank is going to open up their data besides of the PSD2 requirements, and what market participants should expect getting it first?
I think we already are opening data on commercial basis. These customers are corporate customers, which we are first cooperating with. So if there is interest on what particular data and what is the scope, so I suggest to contact us directly, as it's still not broadly publicly advertised, as it varies from company to company, from what extent and what data sets we're opening. So I just can invite you to ask this question and to contact the open banking team on our website. Yeah, so we're already doing it.
Yeah, it's actually interesting how these initiatives of opening up the data comes from, well, just asking, because before nobody knew that it's needed to somebody. And those young companies, startups are coming and saying, well, we can actually make use of this bunch of data, of that bunch of data. Could you just share it with me?
I think it's maybe this event, right? So we're putting the topic up. Actually, I think that I can as well mention and remind that on non-commercial grounds, so we already are having the data for governmental sector. So it's not something really like new or rocket science. It's happening for a while already, and it has place in Europe and in the world, I think. But it is, it's a particular business model as well, for not only for us but for other companies. So if we speak about something which is like premium API or premium things, so it's commercial ground.
Yes, and well, all these things are happening step by step, and sometimes we need to look back quite a bit to understand how much we achieved in past several years. But to close this discussion, I would like to ask about the future and, let's say, 2030, how data will affect our lives in the future, and what will be those key things that will change in the future in, let's say, 9 years from now. Gerda, can we start from you?
Yes, actually, I have just had this discussion in GovTech conference a few hours ago. So my dream is that the data won't be owned by some institutions. We will create data by behaving every hour, because it's an alternative data sources. There won't be some data hubs. We'll see data everywhere. And I think that data-driven decisions will be the hygienic for all SMEs and big companies. It won't be a privilege to big companies only.
Adriana, what's your take on the future of open data and how our daily life will change?
Actually, it's really a futurist exercise, but what we are building this future right now, let's put it that way, and that's the future that we envision. First, we really believe on the thematics thing around the data. It means the data related to sustainability with the data related to mobility. We really believe that combining these thematic areas will be more useful to have this kind of ecosystem that survives around this kind of data. So that's one of the things that we are pursuing and we are focused. The other hand is really, and I believe that I mentioned a lot during the panel, the creating the intuitive experience around the data. Data right now is still an entity, and we need to have this kind of close relationship to wake up with the data and the way that we are waking right now, when you have the whole mobile capture and send information to you, but really applying on the daily base. And for doing that, we really need to create this kind of intuitive process, and that's another thing that we are pursuing. And in the third component is really enhance the ecosystem. It means since the offering, a lot of mention here by the European Commission, JIRA, and Shimon, enhance the way and facilitating the process. That's what another thing that we are really doing to create this future is really building this kind of easy environment to share your data, helping the government, companies, and even small companies open and sharing the data in the more smoothly and seamless way. So I believe that's the three main goals in the future, and actually we are trying to build it, and I hope we can build together. I feel that we have a lot of synergy, and maybe we should talk more.
Great. Ekaterina, what do you think? How it will influence us in 9 years?
You know, I would like to believe that we will find and use the sustainable ways of keeping and storing all the amounts of data that we are creating, because I totally support Gerd that data is everywhere. So if not in hubs, so somehow virtually, but still I hope it will not explode our resources on Earth. But I think as well, what is my wish maybe for if we're talking about 2030, so I would like that this open data is not complicating our life, but makes it easy and we are able to create real added value, you know, and out of it. But the question is what I'm thinking more and more, that maybe not at 2030, but at 2300, we will be able to open data outside the Earth. You know, that is as well a very important topic. You know, so not only Voyager is carrying the data about the human beings on Earth, and we are able to spread it in some other way.
I love how we can actually talk in such grand visions and very abstract ideas that, well, with the time we can achieve it, and we can open up so much data. And I wanted Jiri to answer to this question, the last one, because of that very broad picture of how the European Union looks like. So from your perspective, how the future will look like considering open data?
Well, I can safely predict that there will be more data. That's, well, I think everybody after 2020 should be quite modest in the predictions, because every time something can happen that we did not expect and change everything. But there are some trends that we observe, very beyond the simpler one that, of course, there will be more data. In terms of open data, we see that countries now take data more seriously and more holistically. So when they rebuild their systems, their internal systems, they try to look at all the data that they have, so that it's not just splintered all over the country and different bodies. They just put it into one big a group, and then what differs is the access rights to data. So part of the data can be used only by the given service, part of the data can move inside the government, part of the data can be made open. So there it's much easier for citizens actually to see what is inside the government, and also it allows for e-government, once only principle, for example. And also it allows for you to get access not only to open data, but to data that you can get only. So that's one trend that I hope will be very, very far already by 2030. And it goes together hand in hand with another aspect, that open data is not enough anymore. It was enough maybe 15 years ago, but not today. Even in today's event, which is called open data, we frequently spoke about the data coming from the private sector, and that all this needs to be meshed up together. And the Commission actually is following this need as well in the upcoming legislative proposals, which will make it easier for us to give away our data. It will be easier for companies to get to the data which is not open, but when they provide some assurances, they can still get to it, or at least to the insights from the data. And last but not least, we try to make it easier and safer for businesses to exchange data between themselves. So all this will be much farther by 2030, and all sources of data will be then possible to be used on a much larger scale than it is today. Okay, with the disclaimer that anything can happen. Of course, these are the trends that we see.
Well, from what I heard over a little bit more than an hour, you all send a very clear message that, well, we have all the initiatives coming from European Commission in all European Union countries about opening the data. We have interesting startups trying to present it and make the best use cases out of it. We have corporations participating with their own data and helping with creating some new interesting projects. I think that the future is quite exciting, seeing all the cooperation between private and public sectors, between small and big companies. What is needed is just the action from those businesses who actually can employ that data and who can grow with it. So I would like to encourage all the listeners to reach out to these wonderful people who already know a lot in the field and can guide you through the way on using more data and employ it wisely. So don't be afraid to reach them out and start doing it now. Thanks a lot for participating in this discussion, and thanks to all the people who watched it, asked questions, and participated so actively. Thank you, and see you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
See you.
you.
Bye.